Welcome to a story that unfolds in the bustling heart of one of the world's busiest airports, where fortunes, reputations, and destinies can change in a single boarding announcement. When Ebony Winters, a poised and determined black woman, steps into Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, she hopes for nothing more than a smooth journey and a safe arrival. But a cruel comment, "No space for your kind," turns her experience into a heart-wrenching spectacle that tests her resilience and unearths hidden prejudices beneath the airport's glossy sheen. Little does anyone know that Ebony holds a secret, a connection to the airport's most powerful figure that will shock everyone involved. Ebony Winters had always been an early bird. Long before the first rays of sunlight colored the Georgia sky, she was awake, going through her daily routine. Journaling a short meditation and a brief phone call to her mother up in Chicago just to tell her she was safe. Traveling was part of Ebony's life now. A first-generation college graduate turned philanthropic entrepreneur, Ebony had dedicated herself to improving educational opportunities for children in underprivileged communities. Over the years, she'd built a reputation for her generosity, her strategic mind, and her refusal to be deterred by obstacles, no matter how large. When she arrived at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport this particular morning, Ebony had no reason to suspect it would be any different from her hundreds of prior airport visits. The airport was in full swing, even before dawn, with arrivals and departures posted on the massive electronic boards. In every corner, travelers queued with coffee cups, laptop bags, and expressions ranging from weary to excited. Ebony felt that small flutter in her stomach, travel jitters mixed with anticipation. She lived for the sense of possibility that airports provided. She'd come to Atlanta from a speaking engagement at a local college. Her flight would take her to New York, where a prestigious fundraising gala awaited. Rushing from her Uber to the check-in desks, she held a single carry-on bag packed with everything she needed, a sleek black gown for the gala, her personal notes, and a few tokens from the campus event she had just attended. For Ebony, traveling light meant traveling free, less to manage, less to lose. She breathed in deeply. Something about Hartsfield-Jackson always invigorated her. Maybe it was the sheer size or the sense of motion from all directions. To Ebony, it felt like a sign of how interconnected the world truly was. She navigated toward the priority check-in line, a perk she had earned after countless flights, and one that sometimes made her feel a twinge of guilt. But she also appreciated the efficiency. Every minute saved was a minute she could invest elsewhere. Ebony, as usual, carried herself with grace, her chin lifted slightly, her hair in thin twists coiled neatly at the back of her head. She wore a navy blue blazer over comfortable jeans and low-heeled boots, business casual, but polished enough for any last-minute meetings. A friendly attendant greeted her, checked her ID, and typed some details on the computer. Heading to JFK, the attendant asked, glancing at her screen. "Yes, that's right," Ebony replied, her voice calm and collected. "Great, Miss Winters. Have a nice flight." And that was that. Everything seemed completely ordinary, just like every other time. Ebony smiled and thanked her. With the boarding pass in her hand, she made her way toward security, weaving through the throngs of travelers. She had no inkling that beyond those metal detectors and winding lines, a drama was about to unfold that would test the very core of her patience and sense of justice. Security check was uneventful, albeit busy. Ebony removed her blazer, placed her laptop in a separate bin, and zipped through the line efficiently. She smiled at the TSA officers, silently thanking them for doing a hard job. They waved her along, and she promptly reassembled herself on the other side blazer, on laptop back in its protective sleeve, carry-on over her shoulder. She made her way to Concourse F, gliding along the moving walkways that transported a kaleidoscope of people, families with strollers, anxious business travelers, even a college basketball team in matching tracksuits. The overhead announcements droned, beckoning passengers to various gates. Along the way, Ebony spotted a small coffee shop. Despite the early hour, the line was long. She joined it without complaint. 5 minutes and a tall latte later, she resumed her path, sipping the comforting warmth. Her boarding gate was at the far end, but Ebony had learned that her airline's membership lounge was a peaceful place to work or relax. As a frequent flyer, she had lounge access. Or so she believed. She walked up to the lounge's front desk. 2 attendants stood there. A woman in her mid-30s with a name tag that read Charlene, and a younger man named Damon. Both were impeccably dressed in the airline's uniform navy suits, with crisp white shirts. Charlene offered Ebony a polite smile at first. "Hello, welcome to the lounge. May I see your boarding pass, please?" Ebony smiled back and handed it over, along with her frequent flyer membership card. She'd done this hundreds of times, so her mind was already drifting to the plush chairs and complimentary snacks beyond the frosted glass doors. Charlene frowned as she checked the information on her screen. "I'm sorry, but I don't see your seat upgraded for lounge privileges." Ebony blinked in surprise. "Oh, I have membership access," she said, tapping the card. "I have the annual pass." Charlene's face remained fixed in that polite but dismissive expression Ebony had become far too familiar with. Charlene consulted Damon, who stared at Ebony with a look that could only be described as skepticism. "All right," Charlene said, after fiddling with the system for a few moments. "We'll need to verify your membership status. Could you step aside for a moment?" This wasn't unusual. Sometimes the system glitched. Ebony obediently stepped off to the side, feeling a slight tension. She glanced around, noticing the well-heeled travelers breezing in and out of the lounge. But Ebony exhaled, determined not to let her mind run amok. Maybe there was just a computer error. Minutes ticked by, long enough for Ebony to grow impatient. Finally, Charlene called her back. "I'm sorry, Ms. Winters. We have no record of a current membership for you. You can purchase a day pass if you'd like, though." Ebony frowned. She'd renewed her membership only a month ago. Something was definitely off. "Could you maybe try again?" "Let me pull up the invoice on my phone," she offered. As Ebony rummaged through her email to find the renewal confirmation, she became aware of Damon's eyes locked on her. A sort of disdain simmered in his gaze. When she found her invoice and offered to show it to Charlene, the older woman brushed it aside. "We need official verification from our system," she said curtly. "Is there a manager I can speak with?" Ebony asked, sensing a shift from simple system error to something less benign. "Please wait," Charlene said again, nodding at Damon. The younger man picked up a phone at the desk and made a quick call. Ebony could hear bits and pieces. "Yes, she's here. Says she has a membership. Ebony Winters." She tried to ignore the uneasy feeling creeping over her. Only a month prior, Ebony had used her membership lounge access in Los Angeles without any issue. She knew her membership was valid. So what was happening here? When Damon hung up, he returned Ebony's boarding pass. "I'm sorry, we still can't verify your membership. You'll need to wait outside." The polite tone grated on Ebony's ears. "I don't understand. I have the receipts. I've used it before." "Can you check again?" she pleaded, frustration edging her voice now. Charlene seemed unyielding. "We have other guests to help," she said, motioning Ebony aside once more. Ebony felt a sting in her eyes, a burning indignation that threatened to overshadow her composure. She forced herself to stay calm, telling herself it was just a bureaucratic glitch. But somewhere in the back of her mind, Ebony noted the cold stares. The whispers from a couple standing behind her, obviously impatient at the hold-up. This was just the beginning, and Ebony had no idea how far this small moment of tension would spiral. Ebony felt the tension coiling in her stomach as she stepped aside again. She glanced at her phone, 7:05 a.m. She still had over an hour until her boarding time, but dealing with this lounge access fiasco was eating into her morning. She wondered if it might be easier just to walk away and find a seat at her gate. But Ebony's sense of justice urged her not to surrender that quickly. She had paid for her membership, and this wasn't right. Charlene and Damon were now smiling at the next guests in line, an older white couple in expensive coats. They scanned the couple's boarding passes, cheerfully welcomed them in, and did not once suggest that their membership might be invalid. Ebony swallowed an uncomfortable lump in her throat. She reminded herself, no assumptions. Don't jump to the race issue yet. But the possibility burned in her mind. Was she being profiled? When Charlene turned and locked eyes with her again, Ebony summoned her courage and approached. "Excuse me, but can we resolve this? I really do have lounge access and I have proof." Charlene pursed her lips. "Ma'am," she said, stretching out the word in a dismissive drawl. "Please understand, we have to keep our lounge exclusive for authorized members, and right now, the system doesn't show you as authorized." Ebony's voice quivered, but she kept it as steady as she could. "I understand that, but I have the membership receipt right here. At least look at it." The older woman eyed Ebony's phone screen for maybe 2 seconds, then shrugged. "That doesn't look official to me." A flush of heat washed over Ebony's cheeks. "It's an email from your airline. It's the same address that sends me flight updates." At that moment, Damon intervened. "Look, you're holding up the line. We need to maintain a certain standard here." His tone was clipped sharper than before. Ebony could sense her heart pounding. She noticed that some other travelers, especially some who looked like her, were watching this exchange with concerned eyes. Finally, Ebony drew a deep breath. "Could you call your supervisor? Or check with the airline membership services? I can wait, but please verify." Damon rolled his eyes as if Ebony's request was the height of inconvenience, but he lifted the phone. "Yes. Could we get a manager up here? We have a situation with a passenger." Ebony caught the emphasis on the word situation. She pressed her lips together. She'd done nothing but try to prove her membership. This was not the scenario she'd anticipated for a calm morning. Minutes passed, and Ebony stood quietly to the side, sipping her coffee, now lukewarm, and forcing her face to remain neutral. She was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing her visibly angry. At last, a tall woman in her 50s, with neatly styled grey hair and a calm expression, hurried over. Her name tag read, "Belinda, Lounge Manager." She asked Ebony to explain the issue. Ebony recounted the story, showing Belinda the email on her phone. Belinda frowned thoughtfully and tapped through the airline's internal system. After a moment, the manager said, "I see your name is Winters, but the membership does appear inactive. Let me check your renewal date." She asked Ebony for her membership number, which Ebony provided from memory. "It says here that your membership was renewed but never activated properly. That might be a glitch. Let me see what I can do." Relief washed over Ebony. Finally, someone was paying attention in a constructive way. "Thank you. I appreciate your help." Belinda typed for a few more seconds, eyes flicking over the screen. Then she nodded. It looks like I can fix it on my end. Our system sometimes has a lag. Ebony's shoulders relaxed. The tension started to melt away. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Belinda gave a reassuring nod. I'll print you a temporary pass so you can enter. This will be sorted out completely in a day or two. Sorry for the trouble. Ebony exhaled. No problem. She paused and then locked eyes with Belinda. If I may, I'd also like to mention. The staff here seemed reluctant to check thoroughly. It felt adversarial. Belinda sighed, a sympathetic frown tugging at her lips. She glanced at Charlene and Damon, both of whom were looking everywhere but at Ebony. I understand. I will speak with them. Here is your pass. And truly I apologize for the inconvenience. Ebony took the printed pass, thanked Belinda, and headed into the lounge at last. She felt eyes on her as she walked by Charlene and Damon, but she didn't bother to look back. She was determined to salvage her morning, maybe get some work done before her flight. Once inside, Ebony's spirits lifted. The lounge was an oasis compared to the crowded concourse plush armchairs, a complimentary buffet, large windows with a sweeping view of the plains. She found a quiet seat near the windows and plugged in her laptop. Before she could fully settle, however, a soft beep emitted from the membership pass printer on a side desk, drawing the attention of another lounge agent, Kyle. He glanced at Ebony, who had just sat down. Ebony decided to ignore him for the moment, focusing on an email that required her immediate attention. A short while later, Ebony felt someone approach behind her seat. She glanced up to see Kyle clearing his throat. He was a wiry man with neatly parted hair and a forced smile. "Excuse me, Ms. Winters," he said. "Could I speak with you for a second?" She rose, shifting uneasily. "Yes." Kyle took a step back, gesturing for her to follow him to a discreet corner by the windows. "I'm sorry to bother you," he began, "but I just noticed your pass was issued as a temporary override. Are you aware that you don't actually have lounge privileges on your standard ticket?" Ebony's pulse spiked. She forced herself to remain calm. "That's right. There was a glitch with my membership. The lounge manager, Belinda, fixed it and gave me a temporary pass." Kyle nodded slowly, but Ebony caught a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Yes, that's what the system indicates. I just need to confirm a few details for our records. Could I see your ID again?" Ebony breathed out, wanting this entire fiasco to end. She handed over her driver's license. Kyle scrutinized it for much longer than seemed necessary, typing details into a small tablet he carried. Ebony forced a tight smile. When Kyle finally returned the ID, Ebony asked, "Is that everything?" He paused, then said, "Well, actually." "Ms. Winters, how did you come by the membership in the first place? Was it purchased under your name?" For a moment, Ebony felt words fail her. Of course it was purchased under her name. She'd used her credit card and had done so for years. Why was this man asking? Suddenly, Ebony sensed the presence of other lounge guests' eyes on them. This conversation was no longer private. She set her jaw. "Yes, I purchased it myself. I've had it for several years." Kyle nodded again, but the doubt lingered in his expression. "We have a lot of issues with unauthorized passes. Sometimes people share them or buy them illegally, just making sure everything checks out." Ebony's voice turned colder. Belinda verified everything. "I'm sure you can confirm with her." Kyle hesitated, but before he could say anything else, Belinda strode over. She must have noticed the tension from across the lounge. "Is there a problem, Kyle?" He quickly turned to her. "Just verifying. I saw the temporary pass." Belinda gave him a pointed look. "I've already cleared Ms. Winters. She's free to use the lounge." "Thank you, Kyle." Kyle nodded sheepishly and stepped away, returning to the front desk. Ebony exhaled a shaky breath, grateful Belinda had stepped in. Belinda leaned in and murmured, "I'm sorry. That's not our usual protocol. Please enjoy your time here." Ebony nodded, forcing a small smile. But inside she felt the sting. She could sense the quiet judgment from some of the lounge guests. Was it curiosity or suspicion? Perhaps some were eavesdropping. She tried to shake it off, but the morning's events had already planted a seed of resentment in her mind. In an attempt to reclaim her calm, Ebony grabbed a small plate of fruit and some water, then settled back into her seat. She opened her laptop, determined to bury herself in work for the next 30 minutes. She reminded herself of the upcoming gala in New York, her commitments, her philanthropic goals. She couldn't allow these microaggressions to derail her day, yet a question hovered in her thoughts. Why was it so difficult for some people to simply accept that a black woman like her could hold the same status as anyone else? Half an hour later, Ebony found herself more relaxed, having buried her mind in spreadsheets and emails. She'd made progress reviewing proposals for a new after-school program in Detroit. Even her coffee was replaced by a refreshing glass of orange juice. The lounge was less crowded now, so she felt a momentary sense of peace. That tranquility didn't last long. She noticed a woman with short, platinum blonde hair and an expensive-looking blouse whispering to another lounge guest, both occasionally casting glances at Ebony. She tried not to meet their eyes, but the frowns on their faces were hard to miss. Ebony told herself to ignore it. But a moment later, the blonde woman approached. She wore a name badge, indicating she was part of a large corporate group traveling to a conference. Perhaps Ebony recognized the company name, though she couldn't recall. "Excuse me," the woman said crisply, her voice laced with condescension. "Are you sure you're in the right lounge?" Ebony forced herself to remain neutral. "Yes, I am." The woman's eyes flitted to Ebony's carry-on, then her clothes. "Because this lounge is for premium travelers. I've heard there's been confusion about some unauthorized pass." Ebony stood, controlling the trembling in her hands. "I am authorized. Now, if you'll excuse me." Before Ebony could finish, the woman stepped closer, adopting a tone that drew the attention of those around them. "Look, I don't want to call security, but you'd better clarify your situation. I know for a fact that the staff had an issue. My friend overheard them say, 'They told you no space for your kind.'" Ebony's heart slammed against her ribcage. She felt a wave of heat ascend from her chest to her neck. Had the staff really said that line? She hadn't heard those exact words, but it explained their hostility. Her kind. Her mind latched on to the blatant discrimination hidden behind those words. Ebony looked around, suddenly aware that all eyes were on her. She swallowed, feeling tears threaten, but she refused to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Yes, I'm in the right lounge," she repeated, her voice wavering but resolute. "This conversation is over." The woman huffed. "Fine, just making sure. We pay good money for this lounge." With that, the woman pivoted on her stiletto heels and marched off. Ebony could practically feel the tension crackling in the air. She sank back into her seat and tried to control the trembling in her hands. Some onlookers gave Ebony sympathetic glances, others simply turned away. Ebony recognized she could ask Belinda for help again, but the repeated harassment was wearing on her. No matter how many times the system verified her membership, it felt like a section of travelers and staff didn't want her there. The question repeated in her mind: did they simply think she didn't belong because she was black, or because she looked too casual in her jeans? Ebony was far too accustomed to these micro and sometimes macro aggressions. But the words "no space for your kind" wouldn't leave her mind. If a staff member actually said that it was far beyond micro. She discreetly typed a note in her phone detailing the morning's events. She had learned from experience to keep records of any questionable interactions. Documenting everything was a sad necessity in certain situations. She included the time, the names she knew: Charlene, Damon, Kyle, the rude blonde woman, the manager Belinda who helped. She had no plan to cause a scene. But Ebony believed strongly in accountability. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother: "Travel safe, baby. Let me know when you land." Ebony's eyes misted. For all her mother's unconditional support, Ebony had never shared the full extent of the subtle racism she faced in such places. She always sugarcoated or brushed it off to avoid worrying her mother. Today, Ebony felt the urge to confide, but with her flight approaching, she decided to wait. Looking at the time, Ebony realized she still had about 40 minutes before boarding. She decided to step out of the lounge, pick up a small souvenir for a friend, then return just before boarding. She gathered her things, took a last sip of her juice, and left without a backward glance at the watchful eyes behind her. Ebony strolled through the concourse shops, taking comfort in the busy swirl of travelers. A kitschy gift store caught her eye, and she stepped inside, scanning racks of T-shirts and mugs, proclaiming IATL. She picked up a magnet for her longtime friend, who collected them from around the country. As she moved to pay, Ebony heard a deep, familiar voice from behind her. She turned, half expecting to see a long-time colleague or an old classmate. Instead, she found herself face to face with a tall man in a tailored suit and a warm smile. For a second, Ebony's mind struggled to place him. "Miss Winters," the man said, smiling broadly. Then Ebony recognized him. Bradley Coleman, the director of philanthropic development at a top Atlanta non-profit. She had met him earlier in the year at a fundraiser. Ebony's eyes lit up. "Bradley, good to see you. How are you?" He offered a quick, polite handshake. "I'm great. Surprised to see you here so early." "Flying out?" "Yes, heading to New York for a gala," Ebony explained. "You?" Bradley chuckled. "Actually, I'm here to pick up a special guest. My boss is tied up, so he asked me to step in. Long story. But we have a real VIP arriving." Ebony tilted her head curiously. "VIP? Huh. Someone big in the non-profit world?" Bradley shrugged, a slight twinkle in his eyes. "Not exactly. It's more corporate. The airport's majority owner, some high-profile investor from overseas. They're about to finalize major expansion and philanthropic projects in Atlanta, so it's a big deal. And guess what? The boss said the visitor specifically requested to meet you." Ebony paused, her eyes widening. "Meet me?" "Are you sure?" Bradley nodded. "You made quite an impression on the philanthropic circles. Word is this investor admires your approach to community-based initiatives. They want to see if you'd be willing to collaborate on their new philanthropic wing." A wave of surprise swept over Ebony. She had no idea her work had garnered that level of interest. "Wow, I'm flattered." Bradley checked his watch. "Listen, I'd love to introduce you if you have time. Their private jet just landed. They'll be arriving in the main concourse soon." Ebony hesitated, recalling the fiasco in the lounge. Part of her wanted to just board her plane and leave the airport behind. But this was a huge opportunity. I have about 30 minutes before boarding. Let's see if we can squeeze in a quick greeting. Absolutely, Bradley said, motioning for Ebony to follow him. She paid for the magnet and hurried after him, weaving through the busy concourse. They headed toward an exclusive arrivals zone, usually reserved for private and charter flights. Ebony's mind raced, replaying the unwelcoming lounge staff and rude travelers. Could the tides be turning so quickly? A cluster of black-suited security personnel and airport officials stood near a roped-off area in front of a discreet doorway. Bradley flashed a credential and Ebony followed him through. They approached a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair who wore an air of authority. Mr. Rosen. This is Ebony Winters, Bradley introduced. The man, presumably a high-ranking airport official, nodded stiffly but politely. Yes, Miss Winters. I've heard good things about you. The VIP will be out shortly. A door slid open, and Ebony inhaled sharply. A group of individuals dressed in sophisticated attire stepped through. At the center was a man in his late 60s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and carrying a cane with a carved handle. Despite the cane, he held himself straight with dignity. Flanking him were associates Ebony assumed were advisors or personal staff. Mr. Rosen greeted the man. Welcome to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, sir. We hope your flight was comfortable. The older man nodded politely, scanning the small group. His gaze landed on Ebony, and his eyes lit up with recognition. He spoke with a refined British accent. You must be Ebony Winters. Ebony stepped forward, her heart fluttering. Yes, sir. A pleasure to meet you. He extended his hand. I'm Sir Reginald Holmes. I've heard remarkable things about your philanthropic work, particularly with after-school programs and scholarships. Quite admirable indeed. Ebony felt her cheeks warm with pride. Thank you. That means a lot. Sir Reginald turned to Mr. Rosen. I trust everything is ready for me to see the facilities. Mr. Rosen nodded. We've prepared a tour of the terminal expansions. Plus we can visit the lounge and speak with some of the staff. Then we'll move on to the philanthropic project proposals. At the mention of the lounge, Ebony felt a flicker of unease. She swallowed, trying not to let her morning's experience overshadow this chance. Bradley cut in. Ms. Winters, I'm sure you have a flight soon. Would you be able to stay for a short portion of the tour? Sir Reginald was hoping to discuss some community outreach plans with you. Ebony hesitated. Could she risk missing her flight? The potential reward was significant, but also she wasn't sure how quickly the lounge fiasco would blow up in her face if they actually walked into it together. Sir Reginald noticed her hesitation. I don't wish to inconvenience you, my dear, but if you have a few moments, I'd be honored by your presence. A determined resolve took hold of Ebony. She wouldn't let the morning's discrimination hold her back from an opportunity to do good. I'd be honored too, she said. I'll stay for as long as I can. Thus, Ebony found herself escorting Sir Reginald Holmes Bradley and Mr. Rosen through the concourse, heading straight toward the lounge that had nearly denied her entry less than an hour ago. A swarm of airport staff and security surrounded them, ensuring that travelers kept a respectful distance. As they walked, Ebony could feel her nerves prickling. She wasn't typically one to revel in schadenfreude, but she couldn't help but wonder how Charlene Damon and Kyle would react if they saw her returning with the airport's primary owner at her side. Sure enough, as they approached the lounge entrance, Ebony glimpsed the trio at the desk. Charlene's eyes widened. Damon swallowed, and Kyle nearly dropped the tablet he was holding. The lounge manager Belinda stood there as well, wearing a neutral but watchful expression. Mr. Rosen stepped forward to greet them. "Belinda, this is Sir Reginald Holmes, part of the main investment group owning a majority stake in the airport. We'll be touring the lounge facilities." Belinda immediately extended her hand in greeting. "Welcome, sir. A pleasure to have you." He nodded graciously, glancing around at the staff. "Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing what improvements and expansions are possible." His eyes slid to Ebony, and then back to Belinda. "And Ms. Winters here, has your staff been taking good care of her?" The question hung in the air. Ebony could see the subtle tension in Belinda's posture. For a split second, Ebony thought Belinda might lie to save face, but the manager offered Ebony a small nod of acknowledgement. "We did have a small membership glitch earlier. I resolved it." Sir Reginald nodded. "Good to hear. I certainly hope Ms. Winters encountered no trouble. She's a guest of mine after all." At that, Ebony caught a fleeting look of horror on Charlene's face. Damon shifted uncomfortably, and Kyle found something fascinating on the floor tiles. It was the moment Ebony had dreaded, and maybe in a small corner of her mind anticipated. Inside the lounge, a quick hush fell as travelers noticed the entourage entering. Sir Reginald's presence was unmistakable. He exuded an aura of power and refinement that made heads turn. Belinda began pointing out the lounge amenities. "Here is our seating area. We have a business center over there. Complimentary refreshments." Ebony discreetly looked around, noticing the blonde woman who had confronted her earlier sitting near the buffet. The woman's eyes flickered with confusion and surprise as she caught sight of Ebony walking alongside Sir Reginald. Ebony averted her gaze, determined to keep this as professional as possible. At a certain point, Sir Reginald paused, addressing the manager and the staff. "One of the reasons for my visit is to evaluate how inclusive and welcoming these facilities are. We can have state-of-the-art technology and fine furnishings, but if our staff doesn't provide world-class service to every paying customer or valued member, then we fail." He spoke calmly, but Ebony could feel the steel in his words. "I understand Ms. Winters had some difficulty earlier. Could you explain what went wrong from your side?" Belinda. Damon and Charlene exchanged glances, each hesitant to speak. Finally, Belinda cleared her throat. "It appears that Ms. Winters' membership renewal had not updated in our system. There was confusion at check-in, but we resolved it." Sir Reginald nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, technical glitches happen, but I've also been informed that certain statements were made, something along the lines of no space for your kind. Is that accurate?" A pin-drop silence followed. Ebony saw Damon's eyes widen, and Charlene seemed to shrink behind the desk. The blonde woman looked away, feigning intense concentration on her phone. The entire lounge atmosphere shifted to a hush of dread. Belinda's voice was quiet but firm. "I did not witness those statements, sir. However, Ms. Winters did express concern that she felt unwelcome. I can't confirm what was said by my staff when I wasn't present, but I am aware that Miss Winters was treated with undue suspicion." Ebony's heart fluttered in her chest. She appreciated Belinda's honesty. Meanwhile, Sir Reginald's face hardened. He turned to Ebony, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Ms. Winters, you have my sincerest apologies. If you felt any discrimination here that reflects poorly on the entire ownership and management, I assure you that's not what we stand for." Ebony nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She could feel the eyes of the lounge on her. "Thank you, Sir Reginald. I appreciate that. I only wish to ensure that no one else has to go through a similar experience in the future." Sir Reginald faced Belinda again. I expect a full investigation. If indeed such comments were made, particularly one as egregious as "no space for your kind," there will be consequences. Belinda's face was grim. Yes, sir. I understand. Word travelled fast. By the time Sir Reginald stepped into the lounge conference room with Ebony and Bradley, the staff and a handful of eavesdropping lounge guests were in a subdued uproar. Ebony was certain that Charlene Damon and Kyle must be feeling terrified, and a small part of Ebony wanted them to be, if only to understand that their words and actions carried consequences. Bradley discreetly congratulated Ebony. You're handling this well, he whispered. Don't let them intimidate you. You're in the right. A swirl of emotions clouded Ebony's mind. She felt relief, vindication, and a prickling anxiety at being the center of so much attention. But she also felt sorry that it had come to this public confrontation. She didn't want any of the staff to lose their jobs necessarily, only to recognize their behavior and rectify it. Whether that was naive or not, Ebony couldn't say. Inside the conference room, Ebony and Bradley joined Sir Reginald and Mr. Rosen, plus a couple of Sir Reginald's advisors. The door closed, muffling the chatter outside. Sir Reginald sank into a plush chair and set his cane aside. Now, Ms. Winters, he said, leaning forward. I'd like to hear about your work and see how it aligns with our philanthropic strategy here at the airport. But before that, do let me express once again how sorry I am for the incident. I won't pretend that ignorance and prejudice don't exist in this world or in our own facilities, but I promise we'll address it. Ebony smiled gently. Thank you. That means a lot. I believe wholeheartedly in second chances, but I also believe in accountability. Indeed, Sir Reginald concurred. Now shall we move on to the main reason for this meeting, your philanthropic endeavors. And so Ebony launched into a summary of her initiatives. She explained how she used a combination of scholarship funds, mentorship programs, and local partnerships to uplift underprivileged communities. She highlighted her track record of success in improving graduation rates and overall academic performance for participants in her programs. Sir Reginald listened intently occasionally, asking pointed questions about sustainability and scaling. Bradley chimed in with facts and figures from Ebony's past accomplishments. I must say, Miss Winters, your work is highly impressive, Sir Reginald remarked after a thorough discussion. The airport expansion plan includes a significant budget for community enrichment. I'd like to form a partnership with you, perhaps create a dedicated after-school program in conjunction with a local community center here in Atlanta. A surge of excitement lit up Ebony's face. That would be wonderful. I have contacts with multiple local organizations. We can structure a program that benefits youth in the neighborhoods most affected by airport noise traffic and other factors. Sir Reginald nodded, sharing a look with his advisors. Let's finalize some details within the next few days. I'd like to have a formal announcement once the expansion is greenlit by the city. I'll have my team coordinate with you. Ebony felt a wave of gratitude. Despite the morning's harrowing events here, she was forging a potentially transformative partnership. She glanced at the time, realizing she'd spent more than half of her boarding window in this meeting. Sir Reginald. I'm honored. Unfortunately, I may have to rush to catch my flight. Mr. Rosen interjected. We can have a golf cart arranged to expedite your journey to the gate if you're running late. We do that for special guests. Thank you, Ebony said, exhaling relief. That would be great. Sir Reginald stood leaning on his cane. I'll walk you out, Ms. Winters. Outside the conference room, the lounge was abuzz. Sir Reginald led Ebony through the lounge to the main hallway, accompanied by Bradley and Mr. Rosen. A staff member from the airport's special services team arrived with a small motorized cart, ready to whisk Ebony away to her gate. Just then, the blonde woman from before stepped forward. "Excuse me, Mr. Holmes," she said, addressing Sir Reginald in a falsely sweet tone. "It's such a pleasure to have you here. I wanted to say that I've been a loyal customer for years, but I'm concerned about the integrity of this lounge. Earlier, I overheard some confusion about unauthorized passes. Ebony couldn't believe the audacity. Sir Reginald cast her a cool look. "Your name, madame?" She gave a plastic smile. "Linda Abrams." Sir Reginald nodded courteously. "Ms. Abrams Ebony Winters is here as a valid member and a VIP guest under my direct authority. I suggest you refrain from making unfounded assumptions about her status. Is that clear?" Linda Abrams's face turned scarlet. She stammered something about not meaning any offense before slinking away. Ebony almost felt a pang of pity, but the memory of Linda's earlier hostility tempered any sympathy. With that, Ebony climbed onto the golf cart. Sir Reginald gave her one final handshake. "Safe travels, Ms. Winters. I'll be in touch soon." "Thank you again," Ebony said, eyes shining with gratitude. The cart whirred into the concourse, weaving past astonished travelers. Ebony clutched the handlebar, letting the wind rush at her face as they zipped toward Gate A12. It felt surreal this morning. She had been humiliated and singled out. Now she was leaving the airport as a highly regarded partner to the airport's owner. Unbeknownst to Ebony, the fallout of that morning's events was swift. Sir Reginald, outraged by the rumored slur, "No space for your kind," ordered an immediate investigation. Security footage was reviewed, audio from the lounge desk was scrutinized, and staff interviews were conducted. Charlene, Damon, and Kyle were each questioned about their interactions with Ebony. While the footage didn't catch the exact phrase on camera, multiple witnesses, including a co-worker who overheard Damon whisper to Charlene about Ebony, confirmed that something close to no space for her kind had indeed been said. Charlene insisted she never uttered those words, claiming Damon had made the remark. Damon, terrified, tried to deflect blame onto Kyle, saying he was only repeating what Kyle told him. Kyle claimed ignorance, but the testimonies stacked against him. Belinda, though not directly involved in the offending statement, also came under scrutiny for failing to maintain an inclusive environment, though many in upper management recognized she had actually tried to rectify the situation once she learned of it. Within days, Damon and Kyle were suspended pending termination. Charlene received a written warning and mandatory diversity training along with a final notice. The airline's local HR department launched an intensive sensitivity and inclusion program for all lounge staff. Meanwhile, Ebony's story reached the upper echelons of the airport's administrative teams, and from there it spread. Several employees, including Linda Abrams, whose identity was discovered through membership records, received letters cautioning them about disruptive or discriminatory behavior. In the meantime, Ebony boarded her flight to New York. She found herself upgraded at the last minute to first class, likely by the same administrative chain that had recognized her as a VIP. As she settled into the spacious seat, Ebony tried to process everything that had happened. She felt relief, pride, and a lingering sense of disbelief. Shortly after takeoff, she reclined her seat, retrieving her laptop to jot down fresh ideas for the Philanthropic partnership. Her phone was on airplane mode, so she couldn't see the flurry of messages from Bradley and Sir Reginald's office about setting up the next meeting. When the plane touched down at JFK, Ebony texted her mother that she had arrived safely. Then she took a moment to draft a quick email to Bradley. "Thank you for everything. I'm on board for the partnership. Let's talk details soon." He responded almost instantly. Absolutely. Also, heads up, everyone's talking about how you arrived at the lounge with Sir Reginald. You made quite an impact, Ebony. Proud of you. Smiling. Ebony exited the jetway, pulling her carry-on behind her. At arrivals, a chauffeur held a sign with her name. The fundraising gala had arranged a car for her yet another VIP treatment Ebony had grown accustomed to, but never took for granted. As she slid into the back seat of the sleek town car, Ebony closed her eyes and let out a deep, cathartic breath. A couple of weeks later, Ebony was back in Atlanta for the formal announcement of the Philanthropic partnership with Sir Reginald's Airport Investment Group. This time, she didn't have to endure the lounge line at all. She was welcomed by a personal airport liaison who escorted her through a VIP corridor. Before the press conference, Ebony stood outside the same lounge where the conflict had occurred. Inside, the staff had changed some new faces, some newly trained returning faces. Charlene was there greeting a passenger with a genuine smile, though Ebony sensed a subdued tension in her. When Charlene caught sight of Ebony, she approached carefully. "Ms. Winters," Charlene said in a soft voice, "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for how you were treated. It shouldn't have happened. I know we weren't always welcoming, and I regret that." Ebony studied Charlene's face. The woman appeared earnest. Ebony nodded. "Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it." Charlene shifted, glancing down. "It's been a rough couple of weeks. We lost some co-workers. But I realize we needed a wake-up call." Ebony exhaled. "Change can be hard, but it's necessary. All I ever wanted was fair treatment for me and for anyone else who comes through those doors." Charlene gave a tiny nod, a glimmer of acceptance in her eyes. "I understand now." Ebony offered a small, reassuring smile. "I hope things improve for you and for everyone here. Take care." With that, Ebony turned and walked away, her mind steady, her posture proud. She felt a sense of closure. Perhaps Charlene and the others had learned a hard lesson, one they wouldn't soon forget. The press conference took place in a spacious atrium near the airport's administrative offices. A podium stood at the front, with a backdrop featuring the logos of Sir Reginald's Investment Group, the airport, and Ebony's non-profit organization. Reporters milled about, adjusting their cameras and scribbling in notepads. Ebony waited at a table near the podium, finalizing her speech. Sir Reginald approached with a friendly smile resting on his cane. "You look radiant, my dear," he said. "Ready to address the press?" Ebony smiled. "As ready as I'll ever be." Minutes later, the conference commenced. Mr. Rosen stepped up first, making a short speech about the airport's dedication to community enrichment and the upcoming expansions. Then he introduced Sir Reginald, who spoke eloquently about the need for corporate entities to invest in the communities they serve. Finally, Ebony took the stage. Her heart pounded with a mix of nerves and excitement. She gazed at the sea of expectant faces before speaking. "Good afternoon. My name is Ebony Winters. I'm honored to stand before you today as a partner with Sir Reginald Holmes and the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Our goal is to launch comprehensive after-school programs, scholarship funds, and mentorship initiatives for Atlanta's youth. The airport is a gateway, not just to the world, but to opportunities right here in our own backyard. We believe no child's future should be hindered by lack of resources or exposure." She went on to outline her non-profit's track record, the structure of the proposed programs, and the long-term vision for sustainable impact. The cameras flashed, and Ebony found herself feeling a deep sense of purpose. Here she was, forging a path to help the very community that had sometimes resisted her presence. As she concluded, applause filled the atrium. Sir Reginald gave her a courtly bow, and they shook hands for the cameras, an image that would soon grace local news stations and social media platforms. In the following months, Ebony and Sir Reginald's joint program rolled out across multiple Atlanta neighborhoods. Students from under-resourced schools now had new computers, well-trained tutors, and safe spaces to learn after hours. Even more importantly, Ebony's mentorship model matched local professionals and college volunteers with the students, broadening their perspectives on career possibilities. The airport also introduced new staff training programs emphasizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Flyers began to share positive experiences on social media about the lounge staff's improved hospitality. Of course, Ebony knew that prejudice wouldn't vanish overnight, but every time she walked through the airport, Ebony felt a shift, a cautious optimism. Some recognized her face from the press releases or local news stories. Others may not have known her name, but they saw a confident black woman moving through the airport as though she truly belonged. And she did. One day, as Ebony breezed through the lounge for a quick breakfast, before a flight, she was greeted warmly by a new attendant at the desk, a young black man named Austin, who recognized her instantly. He scanned her membership pass, nodded at the system, then handed it back with a smile. "Everything's in order, Ms. Winters. Enjoy the lounge." Ebony thanked him, returning the smile. It was a small moment, but it represented a significant change. No questions about whether she belonged. No suspicious glances. No hidden comment about no space for your kind. She walked in brimming with hope for the future. From a cruel dismissal at the check-in desk to forging a groundbreaking partnership that transformed an entire airport's approach to inclusivity. Ebony Winters' story is a testament to resilience, justice, and the power of positive change. In facing down prejudice, she didn't just vindicate herself. She paved the way for others to experience a welcoming space at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Her courage drew the attention of Sir Reginald Holmes, and together they developed life-changing initiatives for the local community. Ebony's journey reminds us that one person's determination can ripple outward, challenging discrimination wherever it lurks, and fostering a new culture of respect. Thank you for watching and following Ebony's triumphant saga. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like, share it with friends to spread its powerful message, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that celebrate hope, empowerment, and the triumph of the human spirit. Safe travels, everyone.